Welcome, everybody. This is another episode of Escape Velocity. And today I am talking with Tracy Gosson, who is the founder of Sagesse, which is a brand and marketing agency. She's been doing this work for a long time. I would say her specialty has always been in places, branding and marketing places, and works with a lot of nonprofits, which we can dive into that and the state of that in this conversation. But I also want to mention that Tracy has experienced a battle, an experience with cancer. Getting cancer is something that you don't necessarily choose. No, you don't. And so I want to talk about that. Welcome to the podcast, Tracy. We've known each other for a long time. We've worked in
you used
similar
to be my
orbits.
neighbor and I didn't even know it.
We were neighbors. I will never forget. I think you commented on when I wrote that podcast, or I wrote that blog like 11 years ago.
Yes.
Baltimore City,
About
you're breaking my
yeah.
heart. And that went viral. And I recall reading some comments where you were like, well, I kind of agree with her, but I would never commit professional suicide like this. And I was like,
I remember direct messaging you because I think when I became familiar with you was back when Twitter was a good place.
Yeah.
Days. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're like right around the corner for me. What the hell are they doing over there? And I had my business in my row house too.
Yeah.
And you wrote that, and you know that people were coming after you, particularly some people at the city.
Yeah.
And I think I sent you some direct messages like, I don't want to be all potty mouth here, but like, F them, don't worry about it. They don't have the power that they think that they do. You'd say and do whatever you want. And they may not like it, but they need to get to work if they don't like it.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, I remember, texted me too. And he said, are you having a fight with the mayor? I was like, oh my God, this blew up.
Well, because you said something that a lot of people were saying privately and still today say privately. They don't want to get in the crosshairs of whatever. And now it's way more charged around all sorts of stuff just beyond politics.
Well, that's a really interesting topic, right? Just saying what you think and what you feel without fear of the mob coming after you from many different sources. That mob can come for you, and you can get labeled and pigeonholed and attacked and silenced, or have your career ruined.
Yeah, ostracized, cut off from resources and access. Absolutely. Yep.
And I don't like living in that place of fear in my life. And so I will continue to try to say what I think and what I feel. And you're welcome to disagree with me. And on that note,
isn't that how we learn and grow? I have a conviction about something because this is my learned experience. This is what I've learned along the way. This is what I've read. And I want to be challenged by you because I always say to people like, you're so confrontational. They would say to me, I'm like, we're not confrontational. Like, this is where I stand. Like, come back and push back at me because maybe change my perspective. I want to learn something. And so that's not how politics is now. But I always said you should have the same convictions about your position that I do. You should stand that firmly. So convince me otherwise. I'm here.
I'm a big believer in changing your mind is okay. This world is full of a lot of different people and experiences and points of view and perspectives that are all valid, at least in the sense that they have a right to share them and share their thinking and their perspective. And it's only through the exchange of those things that we can grow and get better and change things for the better. Otherwise, what will happen is people will just take advantage of the silence and change things for the worse. Whoever has the most power and is the loudest will use that to bully their way into more of that, in my opinion.
Really? Have I seen that happen somewhere? I don't know.
I don't see that happening anywhere.
I'm just making that up. I would have board members come to me and like, you might want to dial that back. Like what Live Baltimore was like my biggest entree into Baltimore City. I worked in film and television before that, right? And so I bought a house in the city. I renovated it myself. And I was like, Schmoke was mayor. Kurt Schmoke was mayor. This is the late 90s. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, why don't people want to live on the water? Like, this is kind of beautiful here. Why is it so cheap? What's going on? Like, is there something I don't know? Because I wasn't from Baltimore. Is it like dead bodies all over the art? Like, what is the issue? And then you realize it's just like, as former Mayor O'Malley used to say, is the city has an issue of pathological modesty. And I thought, well, we just need to talk about it more positively and talk about these neighborhoods. And when that organization was launching and I interviewed for it, and I had a job, I used to edit TV commercials. Okay. Producers video on television. Hell, that was my career. I edited TV commercials. And I'm interviewing for this job. I'm like, I didn't even know what a nonprofit was. Right. So they're asking me all these questions. I had my notes. I was like, hey, here's what the mayor should do. He should do this, and they should stop doing this. And everyone in the interview was like, what? I'm like, yeah, I wrote a 10-point list. Like, these are all the things that you should be doing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then when I got called back for the third interview, and I was so irritated by the process because I was like, who just gets called for their third interview? Like, just you're going to hire somebody? Because I just didn't come with all this knowledge about how this whole system worked and all that.
No
and
baggage.
I'll never forget this gentleman. His name was Charles Marker, African-American businessman. He's passed now, but it was him and the executive director, Shark Oshana, because it was at CPHA, Citizens Planning and Housing. And he said, look, he goes, we just love everything, like your attitude, what's going on, the work that you've done. He's like, you just need to just dial it down just a notch or two. He's like, you'll do great. He's like, you're going to have to pull back a little bit. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but okay. And they hired me and I was like, okay, what do I do? And Cheryl was like, okay, well, you have this much amount of money to pay you. And then for anything else that you want to do or hire somebody, you have to go raise it. I was like, how do you do that? Well, you write for grants. And I'm like, okay. And I was totally thrown into the fire. Now I'm insulated because I'm part of a bigger nonprofit and we spun off maybe 4 years later. But then I got into that game and I was like, so basically I'm writing term papers. I'm begging the Able Foundation, I want to do X, Y, Z. And it would take you so long. And they'd get the letter and they'd be like, yeah, no, we love what you're trying to do, but no. And I went on this path for several years. I'm like, this is bullshit. Like, you can't run a business like this, right? And start hiring people and people are buying houses and getting married. I'm like, I think people's livelihoods I'm responsible for. And so I spent several years developing what you would now call a sustainable business model for a nonprofit. But I was like, we need to earn our own income. All right. Because I don't want like M&T Bank's philanthropic dollars. I want their marketing dollars. Like, how do we get that? And so I built this whole system of like, okay, we had a retail facility, a mortgage loan officer would be there, a real estate agent would be there, and they all paid for that benefit. We did continuing education courses with real estate agents. When I left that organization, 45% of its income was self-generated. That was a game changer. No one had ever done that before.
Wow.
But that gave me freedom. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to do a paid advertising campaign in Washington, D.C. about living in Baltimore. Goldsecker Foundation gave us some money, but in general, like the city of Baltimore, I was giving you money for that. Well, you didn't have to pay for an ad campaign, but I could use that money, and then it further positioned us to say, oh, okay, for all you apartment, home inspectors, mortgage lenders, real estate agents, you want to reach people that want to live in the city? I'm now your gatekeeper because I'm the one advertising out of market. So if you're not partnering with us, you're not in the game. And so that was how we built this structure. It was amazing.
Now this was a while ago. Do you think it's changed, or do you think Baltimore is still suffering from that pathological modesty, which is preventing it from investing in its best and in focusing on its worst?
So I left Baltimore several years ago. And here's what I've said to people now that are like people my age generation. So I did that. That was close to 30 years ago when I started with Baltimore and did that job. And so I say to people now, like, it's time for the next generation, right, to come in and move forward. Because when I came in, it was like the Don Hutchinsons of the world at GDC. And I was like, you got to go. Your perspective is so archaic.
And our world has changed a lot.
Yes. And I think there's a power and diversity piece in Baltimore. I came from Syracuse, New York. It was like Whitey Whiteville. Let's be real. Baltimore was a huge cultural shift for me and made me see things that I had never seen and struggle with how to perceive a lot of those things. Baltimore constantly challenges you, always, but in a good way, right? If you're doing it right, you're changing a little bit yourself. So the city now, the problem with cities that size is it's the economy. If you don't have money, you can't do anything, right? You can't fix quality of life. You can't fix potholes and make these parks better. And so there are a whole sector of people that are willing to pay that urban premium, right? Because they love that quality of life. But if you can't hold and fix their basics, like they will have had enough. How many more times is my car going to get broken into? And so when you don't have a strong employee base and everything is built off property taxes, there's a whole line of thinking about how you restructure the property taxes in Baltimore City. You tax actually the property and not the building. So then absentee landlords, they're not paying less because their house looks like a piece of shit. You're paying the same thing as everybody else. So it gets to be this whole foreclosure issue. Baltimore is so complicated, but also it has so much potential, right? You can do anything you want there. I went there. I was married at the time when I went there. My ex-husband did morning radio. Our marriage ended live on the radio. He was just such a jerk. Okay. So I had to totally make myself there. And that's the beauty of Baltimore. Like, you can do that. You want to do that? You want to run for political office? You're engaged in that? You can. Like, it's a place where there's not like, I'm still going to ask you where you went to high school. It's not so entrenched like what's your name? Who's your family? You can make your way. Now, there's people like that are always going to kind of rise to the top.
Yeah.
I think Baltimore is great that way.
Yeah. This is a good kind of backdrop into, explain to me how you moved into running your own company.
So let's see. I would say like the 7-year mark at Baltimore. Those kind of jobs, those aren't jobs. Okay. You're running a nonprofit or you're the founder of a company. That's a life. That is your life.
Yeah.
And I loved that. It never felt like a job, right? Because I was free to do whatever I want. If I could raise the money and pull together the partners, like it was limitless. I came up with this ad campaign once we ran in DC when like George Bush was president, and there was a whole thing about how NSA was tapping American phones. So I did an ad. Okay, I read an ad in DC that said it had like a stock photo image of George Bush on the phone, and the headline was like, "We already know you're talking to people in Baltimore. Why don't we just move here anyways?" It was hysterical, right? And I can only get a little by, but the PR that I got out of that, it was picked up by the Chicago Sun-Times. And so we used to do kooky stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you get a call from somebody in DC. And I said to the board, I was like, if our taxes get audited, I'm sorry, I apologize. And then you had the opportunity to do that kind of stuff. And so I just was feeling like I can just hit this reset button every year. No one is ever going to push me out of here. No one's going to say I have to go. This thing is, I can run this on coast and do just fine. And I thought, is this going to be the definition of my life? Like this is when they write my op-ed, this is going to be it. This was it. And I'm like, I think that there's got to be something more left in the tank. And so I left, I quit, and I gave him a long-term notice. And John, my partner, who he's like old school CEO, and he's like, "Oh, you're going to quit without a job, without already another job?" I'm like, yeah, maybe you don't understand what it's like to do a job like this, because there's no bandwidth to think about anything else but this job.
Yeah.
And so I did, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So because it was I used to be in the paper and the media all the time. It was ridiculous. Like, I sat with myself for 2 years and I said, okay, I am no longer going to be invited to things. No one in the media is going to ask my opinion. I am going to become persona non grata as soon as I leave this job. And I better be okay with that. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. And I was okay with it. I did in my head, and I thought, what's my worst case scenario? And I really thought about it, and I said, okay, my worst case scenario is I can't find another job. I go back to bartending that I did 100 years ago, and in walks my former board president, and I have to wait on him. Like, that would be ill. And I was like, all right, if that's the worst I can come up with, because I had an apartment in my house, I'm like, I know I can always make my mortgage. And I was like, if that's worst case scenario, I'll take it. I'm going. And so I pushed myself off the cliff because no one else was ever going to do it.
Yeah.
And then the phone rang, and this, that, and other thing, and different jobs and opportunities. And this gentleman that I used to work with in Baltimore City, Stacy Spann, who's a guy who went to Howard County, and he's like, I need you, all this affordable housing stuff we're doing in Howard County. I was like, okay. And actually, I forgot about this. Yes, Governor O'Malley, they tried to hire me at the state. and they wanted me to put on this project, this wrap realignment, this base realignment thing. And I went back and forth with these interviews, and they take long. And so I was like, okay, I signed this contract with Stacy, and they're like, okay, so we're ready to hire. I'm like, oh yeah, that's too late now. I get to this contract, and they're like, we have a pin for you. Do you know what this means? Like in government, they have a pin for you. Like they've said, it's so hard to get a pin that says, we're going to hire this person. It's gone through all the paperwork. There's a pin, there's a number, and that spot's for you. And I was like, oh, I'm not taking that. And then everyone was like, do you know how hard that is? I'm like, no, I don't know anything about that. But and then I would see O'Malley to eventually like yell at me from across the room. He's like, I heard that you. Who's the lieutenant governor? Anthony. He's the state's attorney guy now.
Anthony.
He's like, I heard that you met with Anthony or blah, 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 and you're not going to. And I was like, do we need to yell this across the room? Like, that's not necessary. Please don't embarrass me. Well, I think you're starting to see the real other side of it, right?
Yeah.
How things really work at a community level, at that engagement level between kind of issue and legislation, and like how things make that leap. And there are the way that things are done and how they kind of have to be done. It's a little like, oh, I get it. Lawyers are always involved, and it always comes down to, because I've been at that table, and I'm not the one saying this, but people are part of a team, and the conversation is like, okay, here's the candidates that you need to donate money to, and here's kind of what you should do. I had a contract, not with the state, but with an entity in the state of Maryland. And I was kind of told, you might want to consider donating the maximum to that campaign, because it might matter if your contract gets renewed. And then I did. And it was the biggest check that I ever wrote for something like that. And I was told later, yeah, your girl did the right thing. And part of me was like, oh.
Yeah, pay to play. And we pretend that it's not, but it is.
Oh yeah, because there's so many like kind of screens that you can hide behind.
Yeah, there's just, I mean, that whole, what did Trump do? He sold some bullshit crypto thing. And I'm like, do we all not see this as just a way for China to like buy him?
Well, the United States is for sale right now. You just name your price.
It's already sold.
People having dinner with him at Mar-a-Lago, and it's $100,000 a pop. And it's like, where's that money going? Talk about for my health. Yeah, my health with him is I just read the headlines to know, are the bombs coming? I don't want to get into it because I'm not giving any of my life to that.
No, and I think that's been my advice to a lot of people. A lot of people are struggling right now, with mental health around what's happening. And this is capitalism eating itself, right? This is like, it's all about money and power and greed and corruption. And it's just on full display. And a lot of people are struggling. And I'm like, look, at the end of the day, focus on what you can actually control. Focus on what actually matters in your life. And yeah, do what you got to do when you got to do it. But in the meantime, don't let it destroy you. Don't let these people.
You said something in another podcast that I was like walking when I was listening to it, and I was like, oh my God. Exactly. You said, and this is the thing that I have said, this is the last desperate gasp of these old white men for power trying to hold on to it. Because I said, what was it, like 3 years ago? It was the first time in the US population we had the largest percentage of non-white births.
Yes.
That's the horizon.
Yeah,
and
that's
they
not
are
changing.
Scared shitless. And this whole thing is this last grasp of power.
They are going to die.
Yes. But you look at the communities that you live in.
They have not solved more.
Right. It's not the media, but stand in your own community and look around.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me that you see nothing but white people around you, you either live in some really strange place or you're not paying attention. Because that's not how things operate now.
Also, yeah, it's not all white people standing around, and it's also not assholes all standing around. Yeah. It is nice people. It is people that genuinely care about each other, that genuinely want the best for their neighbors and their community and their families. And what is right outside our doors and in most parts of this country and the world are people who want good. and who want to help and who want everyone to be better and okay. And yeah, good luck with this. It's ugly, but it's not sustainable.
No, it's not. So I was like, oh my, when I heard you say that, I was like, yes, I'm totally down with that. I've heard so many things on some of your different podcasts. And I'm late to the podcast game, right? Because I don't have much time of like building and renovating houses. It's ridiculous, all the things I'm getting myself involved in.
You are
But when
busy.
this after, yeah, after this last election, I was like, oh, I had always had a morning routine about the news. I'm like, yeah, no, that's done. I can't. I don't want any of this shit sticking to me. And so I started to turn to podcasts a little bit more and going back and kind of listening to your young archive. I know you haven't been doing this very long, but just some really interesting things and some professional things that are interesting. The woman talking about email, I thought was so cool. And I'm like, yes, email's not dead. That's what I thought. But just different people's perspectives about kind of how they're thriving and where they're thinking, their point of view. And it's like, I think it's, you read all these things now, right? What's happening post COVID, and we're still so isolated, right? We got into that mode. And somebody wrote a piece, I think, in the New York Times the other day. You know what we need? We need more parties. Okay. We need to get people together more. We need to be having fun. And just listening to some of your podcasts, I was like, oh yeah, these are like interesting people that like I would want to sit down and be at a dinner party with. How cool.
Yes, I like that's all around us. We can go out and do that and have those experiences and those exchanges. And those are the things and those are the people I want to be talking to. I think something between COVID and then just the internet and Twitter and media and the noise and the constant barrage of it, it makes us feel like our world is so big and we can hear from all these different voices, but none of it's personal. Right? None of it's really personal. And when you have even exchanges with the person that's working at the grocery store to having dinner and conversation with someone that you don't know, but you're curious enough to find out what makes them tick and what they care about, those are all things that to me are a great part of the human condition. The human condition is not to make a lot of money and have the most followers on Twitter and just so much bullshit.
Like I always say, I feel like when I'm having a bad day or I'm just like, you feel overwhelmed, man, just that stupid conversation with somebody in the grocery store, like, hey, I really like your sweater. Or like, I now make a very conscious effort to have these very kind of what would seem insignificant comments and kind of engagement with people, because it's just like, oh, look, we're human, like we're connected. And that I think has so much value in making you feel grounded.
It is the freest, most generous thing you can do is to give that to other people throughout your day. And I was talking with Nancy Lyons. We were talking about how, we're talking about how being queer, coming up in the 80s, coming of age in the 80s and into the 90s as lesbians, we were like, fuck it, we're going to have to figure out how to have our own fun and make our own way. And nobody's going to tell us how we should be or are supposed to be, because it was not a very good time to be that. And now today, kind of facing where everyone's being treated like the way the gays were treated in the 80s. If pretty much, if you're a decent person, you're like a piece of trash if you're different in any way, shape, or form. Right? You're just being devalued constantly and told that you don't matter and threatened and scared.
I don't like that because it forces them to look at themselves, right? Yeah. Well, they're different. Well, do I not fit into it? You can boil so much of human nature down to it's people's insecurities. It's these kind of core pillars, but yeah, we're of similar age, right?
Yeah.
I remember that. And then people would come out and you'd be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, so like what I was saying, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I don't care. And then people started making a big deal out of it. I'm like, well, she's not like hitting on me. She's not trying to make me gay. She's pretty clear that like, yeah, she's not interested in me at all. Like, why do I care?
Yeah, that whole indoctrination thing, we were laughing about it with higher eds. If higher eds were really so good at indoctrination, we wouldn't be in the position we're in today with them.
We would be nothing but Sarah Lawrence's everywhere.
Yeah. Clearly they weren't very good at it. But I do think that the other thing someone was talking about recently was just like, if you really look at this group of evildoers, they're a bunch of losers, honestly. They're the guys that have always been pissed off that they're not invited and they're just like, wah. And they managed to get away with a lot of bullshit for a long time. And now they're trying to leverage that power in a way that you would describe like a very insecure person doing. So
I grew up with 3 older brothers, and none of my brothers were like that. Everyone was just more confident than the other. And so I just look at some of this behavior like small dick behavior. Okay.
yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Small dick energy for sure.
Especially when they're driving a Cybertruck. That's micro.
Don't even get me started.
Don't start.
But I will say, I do think that the people who are still raw for this whole shit show that we're going through right now, I do think they've just been in a situation where they've seen a lot of things that were intended to be good things become corrupted, become stagnant, become ineffective, and nobody's doing anything about it. So there is a notion of like, well, things do need to change. I would hope it wouldn't have had to happen this way, when this is not the way to do it. But there is an argument to be made that a lot of this stuff isn't working right now and does need to be changed. So I think that's kind of how we ended up in this situation to a large degree.
Yeah. And then I also think there's a ton of people in this country that are still pissed off that some black guy made it to the White House, and why the hell am I still here?
Yeah, absolutely.
But whether the media they're certainly not objective. Like,
No.
They're judge and jury. This is not news, because news used to be balanced. Now it's all opinion, right? It's a panel of people, or even whatever the evening news is. You're on CNN or your Fox. It's so much opinion driven. If you actually want news, the only thing you can watch is PBS NewsHour. That's it.
Just news does not get the attention that all of the judgment and it's judgment. Look, we are a byproduct of what the computers have figured out, and these algorithms have figured out, that gets right to our lizard brain faster than anything else. And that's anger and fear. The old, it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
It's true. And we're being manipulated by all of that every day. And so I do kind of hope there is a reckoning around just like unplugging from all of this and getting back to smaller, community focused attention and what we're directing our attention towards. It's so manipulated.
If you even look at the Baltimore Banner, right? Like, they are cutting a path that has uncharted waters, and they're having great success with it. And like, I don't even live there anymore, but I subscribe to it because I want to support them, right? And they're growing and they're doing really well. And they're showing that you don't have to be some massive conglomerate to own a local news publication that has quality information that people want.
Yeah, and everything doesn't have to be a hit piece. Everything doesn't have to be an attack or a defense or a position or opinion. I do want to talk about how you have changed in your life and business and all of it through going through your cancer diagnosis and your very scary battle. And I don't even like using the word battle.
Full on war, baby. It was a full on war. So I'll tell you, and I'll share some things, my tips, particularly to women about healthcare. So I'll start with this. As a woman, you are very likely to be dismissed by doctors for whatever your issue are. And if you are a woman of color, you can add another 30% onto that. Okay. So my thing is, if you have an issue that has lasted more than 2 weeks, get your ass to the doctor. That's what you have healthcare for. And you push until you get the answers that you are comfortable with. So I'm going to start with that. And then I'm going to talk about, because I had ovarian cancer. So here was my situation. This is 2019. I'm working on 2 very big projects, very stressful, working with 2 women, 2 different projects. And this whole women working with each other, helping each other. Yeah, these 2 were not them. Okay. These were 2 nightmare projects. And in my small view was, look, It's my company. I've taken this contract. I need to see this through.
Right.
That way now I know, oh, you know what? I don't like how this is working. We're going to tally up on the back of napkin where we are hours wise, and
Yeah.
you can have some of this money back and we're
See
done.
you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. And good luck. And you can have all these assets. These are yours. But at the time I was like, no, I got to do this. I got to finish through. So I was struggling because I wasn't feeling well. I was really tired and I was perimenopausal at the time. So I'm writing a lot of stuff off to that. I had this loading that was like, I would call it like my food baby. I'm like, oh, it's just so weird. And here's my symptoms for ovarian cancer. I felt fuller a little quicker after I ate. I had bloating and I had my GI was off. Nothing like extreme, just wasn't normal. Nothing. No, nothing was like, oh my gosh, heart palpitation. Nothing. This is the thing about ovarian cancer. So the signs were very subtle. And the other thing is, I've never had like acne, but my face was breaking out. And I wrote this stuff off to perimenopause. I don't know. It's not even like any doctor tells you what's going on, right? And all this stuff finally gets done. I go to my doctor, who my primary care in Baltimore, and this guy I've been with for a long time. And he's like, no, everybody's all very cool, right? Because he's like, well, I said, we haven't done this C125 test in a long time, which is it's a potential marker for ovarian cancer, but it's not a definitive test. It's not like the PSA test for prostate cancer. It could work. Doesn't work for everybody. Because I had an ovarian cyst many years ago. He's like, oh, it's innocent. Okay. And Friday, I'm on the golf course. Okay. I like to play golfing with my two guy friends. I'm on the 4-hole, phone rings. I'm like, oh, it's my doctor. I want to take this. Hi. He's like, normally I wouldn't tell you this on the phone. He's like, but I do have ovarian cancer. I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, I just want to tell you because it's Friday, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay. I hung up the phone. I looked at my two friends. I was like, yeah, I have to go. I have cancer. You're just like, it's literally if someone just hit you over the head. And I made 2 phone calls.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. My partner, who is actually in Florida at his boss's funeral, who died of glioblastoma. And my neighbor across the street, Dr. Karen Miller, shout out to Dr. Karen Miller, who's at St. Agnes, she's an oncologist, and her. And I was like, Caroline, talk to you immediately. I have cancer. Immediately, my phone rings. This is a woman. She's a big deal. She drops the phone immediately. She's like, what? And so I go and get a scan of all this stuff. I get the CD. I come over to her house. I always kept one laptop that had a CD-ROM in it because you never knew. And I was like, we can look at this. And she's like, do you want me to tell you what I really see or just give me an overview? I'm like, no, give it all to me. She's like, yeah, you have an 8-inch tumor and an 11-inch tumor and the right near there. She's like, yeah. She's like, you're stage 3 at least. I was
Wow.
Like, I don't. I'm like, what? And for me personally, thank goodness John was away because I was just like, I didn't know how to process this. And so my role in business has always been, if somebody does something that pissed me off, I let it sit for 24 hours. I don't do anything. I don't react the next day. So I was like, all right, this is going to need like 72 hours. Okay, it's going to need a little longer for this one. And so you go through the whole like, why me and blah, blah, blah. And so I came out by Monday, Tuesday, I was like, okay, I'm online. I'm Googling it. I'm like, okay, I got to do this, that, and the other thing. And so it just starts and it moves fast. This is the thing about cancer. Time is not on your side, right? And you have to make a lot of really big decisions very quickly. So I'll say it's like May 4th and my CA125 is 825. So for a woman, it shouldn't be over 35. Now, for some women, it can say, oh, it's 10 and you've got stage 4 cancer. So this is the thing. It's not a definitive test. Doesn't work for everybody. It's a protein marker.
Right.
So I meet this doctor, that doctor, and I already been at Mercy Hospital. And my God, I cannot say enough about Mercy. Baltimore gets accolades for Johns Hopkins. Mercy, I'm telling you, if you want to know how good a hospital is, you find out how the people that are not doctors, how happy are they? The techs, the nurses, the people that take the trash out of the hospital rooms. Are these people happy? Because if they're happy, that's a great place to be.
That's a great point.
Hopkins doesn't really check all those boxes. And I wanted to go. I said to John, I was like, I feel like I have to go to Hopkins for a second opinion. It's right down the street. This is the thing about the Northeast in general. Your next second opinion is down the street, down the road, next town over. And so I went there and I was shocked by how poorly they were just, okay, yeah, hi, here you are. Here's how we do this. Is how we treat this. I'm like, what? Like, do you want to know like my history? Or I'm like, no, this is what we do. I was like, okay, I'm not going here. So I went to Mercy, and so my world comes to a screeching halt. Everything that you know that you're involved in, it just stops.
Let me just back up really quick though, Tracy. When you said you went and got a scan,
Yeah, CT scan.
what kind of scan did you get? Something that women should be able to get their doctor to
No,
prescribe
you don't
on?
get that. No, you can't get that. It's very expensive because it's contrast. You drink this stuff, and so they scan you. Now you can like MRIs. The MRIs are even more expensive. But no doctor hospital is going to pay for a scan or give you a prescription for it. Now you can go to these places and get these Scandex, whatever these different companies are called.
Yeah, I've noticed they've popped up. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can get that. The problem and challenge with those is it's a snapshot today right now. And we don't really know. That's when you get a mammogram. Where is the dark spot? Not sure. We're going to go then do ultrasound. We might do a biopsy, right? We don't know. You can't tell.
Right. And
Now,
you can compare it. You can compare it to the mammograms that you've hopefully already had too.
Yes. So that's why, like, if you have dense breasts, they'll be like, we always know that this is a weird area. We biopsy this. Like, I have a titanium seed in one of my breasts because after I had been treated with cancer, they're like, and then they mark and they're like, that's fine. So we know in the future that's always the place.
Yeah, I have one too. Yeah.
Yeah. Park this conversation and say, from a testing standpoint, this is what is so fascinating. I am deep in the whole eye cancer stuff now.
Yeah.
You can now buy a test. It's called the Gallieri test. It's $1,000. It's not approved by the FDA yet. One blood test will test up to 50 cancers in you right now today.
Wow.
Now,
and for these cancers the symptoms show up so late.
For some things,
a lot of
yes.
other cases.
Yeah.
And ovarian cancer is one of them.
Yeah. Colon cancer, the rate for people getting colon cancer under 40 years old is skyrocketing globally. It's not just a US thing. So now, remember when they used to say get a colonoscopy at 50?
At 50,
now
yeah.
they're saying get it at 45. There's something going on. Now, if you ask me, it's all related to environmental factors. Most cancers, 15, maybe 20% are genetic or inherited. The rest are all lifestyle and environmental. So you tell me.
We get a lot of plastic in our bodies too.
Plastic. Yeah.
Careful.
So there's that test, which is fascinating. And that actually is going under a huge clinical trial in the EU right now because they're trying to narrow down the misdiagnosis. I think they were up at like somewhere around 28%. They're trying to get that down lower so you don't have a misdiagnosis rate. But that's a test. Like if you knew that you had the BRCA gene or that whatever,
right,
cancer, you could get that right now.
I think that's the thing is that if you go into your doctor, especially as a woman or any minority, and you're describing symptoms and they're so like, oh, well, it's probably gas. It's probably hormones. Like, well, here's a pill to mask the symptoms. We're not going to worry about something an underlying issue that might be causing it. Here's something just to address the symptoms. And I do think that women in particular, as you described, like need to fight and advocate for our own health. And sometimes it is just telling a doctor, hey, I want you to treat me as if I may be at risk of having something more serious here. What tests can I get prescribed through mine that can be covered through the insurance that you will prescribe?
Refer to a specialist. You got to keep checking all the boxes. Yeah.
You have to advocate for yourself.
Since I've been through this, I am a huge advocate. Like for ovarian cancer on a national organization, I go to DC and try and get more research funding with these people all over the country. We do it through the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance. But on the other side, I probably every other month text. So I have a friend, my boss's sister just got diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Will you talk to her? Absolutely. I will take that call. I don't have kids, but I take that call as if it was a kid. You call me anytime, day and night, I will talk to you about this.
I know you have really been such an advocate and spoken so much about the changes that you made that you both went through, the treatment you went through and the changes that you made and the research that you did. It's just been I'm like, when's the book coming out? But in the meantime, I do want to go back because you were talking about going to Mercy.
Yeah.
And
So I
so
go,
yeah.
So I go, and so that number I said, CD125 was 825. Okay. So I
Yeah.
have all these meetings, go to this doctor. What's the plan? You're like, when you have fluid in your abdomen, they call that ascites, right? They're like, the ascites is the bloating is so serious. We have to hit you with chemo right away. You're going to do it weekly, not every 3 weeks. Like, we got to start to contain this. From the time I was diagnosed, my first infusion of chemotherapy was 3 weeks later. And by the time I had my first infusion, that CA125 was up to 1450. That's how fast and how just strong that cancer was. It was like gasoline on a match.
Jeez.
You're just freaking out, right? Now I go to my first infusion and I'm crying because you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Okay, all I know is they're gonna put these chemotherapy drugs inside of me. I'm like, am I gonna? They're like, we'll give all these pre-meds so that you don't have these weird reactions. You're there for 8 hours.
How did you deal with that? How did you deal with that fear?
I was scared and I cried. And these nurses are angels. Okay. School teachers, nurses, they're angels. And they are just like, oh, honey, don't worry. You know what? I had breast cancer. I can't believe how many nurses I met that had cancer. Okay. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you're going to be fine. And blah, blah, blah. We're going to take care of you. And that first infusion goes, and you're like, okay, I'm not dead yet. I'm still here. I'm still here. But I talk to a lot of people, and anybody I could find. And I say to people, anybody that you met over your life, you have cancer, you wring that rag out from the last drop of water. You call whoever you got to call to get an appointment with whoever. No one is going to reject you if they can help you. Okay. You need to see that top doctor at Hopkins. You do whatever you got to do to get in that door. Because that is the difference that could be the difference between life and death. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was talking to a lot of people, and I have a friend I met him when he was at Hopkins doing research, and he's at Harvard, and it has nothing to do with cancer. This guy is hysterical. Dr. Kevin Kit Parker. Okay. This guy's brilliant. I saw him on 60 Minutes one day when I was like making dinner years ago. I was like, oh my God, is that Kevin? He's just that smart. And he's like Southern, and he's very direct. He's like, Tracy, I'm just going to tell you. He's like, look, you're strong. You're real strong. He's like, you got to go this hard. Okay. You take kitchen sink, you throw everything you got, you go at it hard. He's like, because you want to do this once. And I was like, oh, all right. And so I would talk to people, and they would give me all this advice. I was like, all right, I got to go hard at this. Right. And so I did this, started the chemo, and they stick a rod in your abdomen for 4 weeks. It sucked the fluid out of your abdomen and your lung. It's like a gallon it looked like red Kool-Aid. It was just going 90 miles an hour. You're like, okay. And so there is a team at Mercy that does this oncology surgery called HIPEC. HIPEC stands for hypothermic intraperitoneal chemotherapy. And so I had heard about this. And when I was first going there, I was like, don't try and push that surgery on me because I'm not getting it. I'm like, I've read about it, I've seen the videos, and that stuff was nasty. And my oncologist, who's this lovely man from Greece, he'd laugh and he'd be like, he's like, I'm not going to make you do anything you don't want to do. I'm like, because I know where this is going. Because by that point, they're like, yeah, this cancer fluid that was in your abdomen is pushed into your lung. And so that makes you stage 4. Now you get on Google and just Google yourself ovarian cancer stage 4 survival. And it says 30% of the people live 5 years. You're like, oh, well, that's bad.
Yeah.
Shit gets real. And people ask me, like, how do you fight back? And it's everything that's going on right now. What are your other options? Your option is to let it overtake you or not letting that happen. So in my head, I was like, okay. So 30%, my partner, John, who was so optimistic, he's like, we're going to take care of this. This isn't going to be a problem. He had prostate cancer. So I'm like, dude, you're at stage 4. He's like, you're going to do it. You're going to be great. And I'm like, oh, I don't think so. And so in my head, I was like, all right, there's the 30% that make it through that doorway. How the hell do I get in that 30% lane? What do I got to do to be that? And so I did that surgery. And so this HIPEC surgery is, It's regular surgery, right? If you have ovarian cancer, they cut you open. They don't do it laparoscopically. And they got you open. And so I had already had chemotherapy. They do the radical hysterectomy. But this guy, Dr. Sardi, and his team, the surgical team, they call this high-tech surgery, they call it the shake and bake.
I'll never forget you describing that in that way to me.
Yeah. Because you can't forget it. And they're all, oh, yeah, it'll be great. So they take everything out of you, cut any residual cancer they see. And his thing is the cytoreductive surgery. That's when they take the inside of your body during surgery. And his approach is we take everything out that you don't need to survive because it gives one less place the cancer can come back. So it's radical hysterectomy, out comes your spleen, out comes your gallbladder, your appendix, and your omentum, which is that kind of fatty tissue that's between your kind of skin and your abdominal wall, kind of holds all your stuff in. And that's, cancer loves that because all sorts of little crevices. Okay. They take all this shit out. Then they heat chemo to 170 degrees. They base stitch you, line in, line out, 90 minutes on the table. This thing's running through your abdomen. They roll you around the table. This is the shake part because the chemo's baking you. And the nurses in there knead you up to try and get it in all the crevices. Because the point is, we know this is where the cancer is. It's not in my brain. Let's get the chemo where the cancer is. Do it for 90 minutes, suction it out, staple you up, send you to ICU.
They're not fucking around.
No. This is a 10-hour, for me, it was a 10-hour surgery. They call it the mother of all surgeries for a reason. If you are not in ICU, this is the worst one you can get. Now, worst one you can get. This kind of surgery regular it's a pain in the ass anyways, because it's your abdominal core. So this was the go as hard as you can, Tracy thing. Okay. So I was like, all right, this is my best shot at life, right? I have to do it. And I was in the hospital for 8 days, and our average can run like 10 to 12.
I'm sure there's no guarantee you're going to survive this surgery, this process.
Yeah, most people survive the surgery. It's what happens after. The recovery from this is considerable. And so I was all about how the hell do I get out of this hospital? And one day, Dr. Sardi, and he talks with this heavy Colombian accent. And I was in the hospital like 4 days, and it's just tubes everywhere, drains and Foley's, and you're all over the place. I could show a picture of me. I'm bald. It's sad. But that's my warrior picture, right? But you want to look and feel how far you've come. You look at that and you're like, yeah, I can.
Yeah. You should send me some pictures. And for the people that are watching this, not just listening,
sure.
I want to add some of these in because I just think it's very, I don't even have words for kind of what you went through.
Yeah, it's intense. It's intense. And so he comes in and I was like, he's like, oh, and he's super positive. He's like, hi, yeah, how are we doing today? I was like, well, I'm okay. And it's kind of rough. He's like, he's like, yeah. He's like, it's like I drove a Mack truck over you. And then I backed up and I ran over you again. I was like, yeah, you didn't tell me that before the surgery. He's like, you'll be fine. I was like, well, I'm not. I'm like, that's exactly what I felt like. You ran over me with a truck twice. And so I was just super, I walked the halls like it was my job. Anybody came to visit me, I'm like, we're walking. Because, I got to have a bowel movement to get out of there. And when they take all of your insides out, it takes a while for things to kind of find their way back.
Yeah.
And so I got out, and then it's a long road back because so much chemotherapy, your blood counts totally plummet. I went back to the hospital at one point. It was maybe a month after, and I was so depressed. And I couldn't barely take half a flight of stairs because I couldn't get any oxygen. And I was in there and I was crying. And his PA team, there's 5 or 6 of them. They're all really great. And I'm going in there because they're going to do whatever, take some other drain out of me. This guy, and I'm crying. And I was like, I'm never going to get better. I'm like, I'm going to be like this forever. This is never going to get better. I just want to walk outside the front doors of this hospital and walk in front of a bus and just take me. I'm like, this is horrible. And he's like, I'm telling you, he goes, I've never gone through what you're going through. He goes, I totally get it. He's like, this is the most intensive surgery anybody can ever do. He's like, I promise you're going to make it through, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, do you want to talk to a counselor? I'm like, sure. She comes over. I'm like, I just want to die. And then he's like, all right, we're going to give you 2 pints of blood. He's like, maybe boost up your red blood cells. Yeah, an hour later, I was like, I'm fine. Let's go. You don't understand the chemistry of your body. Red blood cells, if you're not getting oxygen to your brain and your body, you
Mhm.
feel like you want to kill yourself. And I was like, oh, okay, my red blood counts are low. Okay, give me some more of that. I must have had eight transfusions of blood
Yeah.
from the time of that surgery. Not that I was bleeding out, but that chemo just destroys all your blood cells. I say chemotherapy is like I need to kill 3 trees in a forest, so I'm just going to burn the whole thing down.
Yeah.
And
Now,
we had
were
trees.
you continuing with chemo after your surgery, or was it all in lead up and then you had the shake and bake?
So so they would call a cycle of chemo is I had it broken out. So I had 9 weekly sets of chemo, just 3 cycles. They want you to do 6 in total. So I have this whole surgery and the recovery is tough. Like trying to get my GI to work again, and you're so weak. I easily lost 20 pounds.
Yeah.
You can lose a lot of muscle mass, and it's a struggle. And so I just would say to John, I'm like, look, this is one day at a time. I'm going to do the best that I can today, and today's going to be better, and maybe tomorrow's going to be worse. But that's all I got. That's all I got. That's all I can do.
Yeah.
And so then they're like, oh yeah, so this is the part I probably left off. So I then, after they send everything to pathology, so they will give you a surgical report, and this thing is long. I couldn't even read it for many months after. And then they're like, oh, by the way, she has a very rare subtype of cancer called carcinosarcoma.
How lucky you.
Yeah, you Google that and it's like, yeah, that one's bad. So like carcino and sarcoma. So carcino is cellular cancer, sarcoma is soft tissue. So that's like skin, bones, ligaments. And so this says, well, her cancer could come back anywhere now. So it can come back hard places to find. Like it could be soft tissue, whatever. And so then they're like, well, we want you to do 3 more cycles of chemo. And I was like, no, dude, no. The whole reason I did that really bad surgery so I wouldn't have to do that. I went ahead and did it because you just went through all that and you're like, you're gonna stop at the just before the finish line. It's like, fuck it, fine, let's do it. I don't want to. Although it was a lot easier doing it every 3 weeks. But I pushed back and he wanted to do it like a month before, and I said, no, I'm not ready. He's like, well, we can't wait too long. I'm like, we're gonna wait as long as I need to, and I'm not ready. I know what it feels like to go through it. I can't do it right now. And so we waited another month and I felt a little bit stronger and it was better. But then it's the recovery from that. And I couldn't like leave my house comfortably because I also had a resection in my lower rectum area because a tumor was pushing up against that. And so they cut a piece out. Turns out it wasn't cancerous. So like my holding tank of like when I had to go, you had to go. So you'd go out to dinner and then peristalsis, stuff's moving. And I'd be in the car. I'm like, okay, we have to get home like right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to make it. So it'd be like, give me the keys. I'll run out to the door. And so it was the process. It took me a while to feel normal in your head. And it's just all, I'm going through menopause now. I have surgical menopause, all this crazy stuff. So you go through all this. Now you're starting to feel like, okay, here I am. Here's where I'm at. So what are you going to do with yourself now?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you have a cancer that has a very high recurrence rate, very high, probably like 80%. So now you're thinking like, well, this is going to come back. And so how do you want to spend your time? So do I jump back into work? Because that's what I used to do. And then I get a reoccurrence 3 years later and I say, that's why I spent my time. And so I struggled, right? And what was really meaningful and how did I want to spend my time? And so John and my partner and I had to build a house. And he's like, are you sure that you're up for this? I'm like, dude, I could be dead like in 6 months. I said, but I think that you should build this house. This is what you'd want. This would make you happy. Like before I went in for surgery, I had a big dinner party at the house the couple days before because I was like, I'm not really interested in you all coming to my funeral. So we're going to have this party now. So if I don't make it, like I scheduled that surgery the day before my birthday because I was like, we'll see if there'll be something to celebrate the next day on my birthday. So I'm in ICU and everyone's like, oh, hey, it's your birthday. I was like, what? But that's my philosophy, right? So yeah. Party before. And then if I make it through to the other side, we'll have another party later. But that was my thing of like, I got to see if I can get to the other side of this because I don't know. And I kept everything very private because I didn't know if I was going to live. And I just didn't want the whole pity party and all that BS. Plus, I was like, if I start my business again, who's going to hire the cancer lady?
Well, had you stopped your business?
Yes, I had to stop everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
couldn't even read an email.
yeah. So you knew that, did you know that was going to be the course that as soon as you knew it was serious? Like, did you know everything was just going to stop?
No, because it's uncharted territory, right? Most of my family is long past, so it's not like I knew that cancer ran in my family. This was not, I don't think that this is hereditary. This, when I look back on it now, I can look back on it with a lens that says, that was my lifestyle. Too much stress, too much work, not enough sleep. Didn't cause the cancer, but it created an environment that made it easy for cancer to find a lifeline. So I work now. So I go through all this kind of healing stuff and all the medical stuff. I was on a maintenance drug called Avastin IV for a year, for 18 months. After every 3 weeks, I'd go for that. But that was easy. That was not like chemo. And that's all about suppressing blood vessel growth. So the cancer, that's all cancer is, right? We all have it walking around in our bodies. We have it.
Right.
All the cancer wants, its lifeline is blood. It gets that lifeline and it can flourish. It may not, but it could. And so like Avastin suppresses your blood vessel growth. So when you're in this kind of recovery phase and cancer's trying to claw its way back, it's not easy for it to find a lifeline.
Yeah.
And so that's a great drug, and that's an easy drug. And this whole process goes through. And now I start to get into the why. Like, how did I get here? And here's the thing about the United States. We are amazing at cutting you open and giving you pills. We are lifesavers. People from all over the world come to the US. We have the best healthcare. But what we're not good at is understanding, how did you get here? Why?
Yeah.
We don't care about that because we can't make money off that.
Yeah.
So I got into this whole, like, the why and some of these alternative treatments. So when I started going through treatment and chemotherapy, and when we first started, I said to John, I was like, look, I've done a bunch of research and I had some health issues in the past. And I said, the one thing that I know is food matters. I said, so I'm going to hire a private chef. And I've just read this book. This book had just come out. Dr. William Lee, his last name's L.I. He's a Harvard guy. He just came out with a book called Eat to Beat Disease when I was diagnosed. Came out right before. It was like it was written for me. And I clung to this book like it was my Bible. And he's done TED Talks, and he's like, scientifically, it's not a diet, but scientifically, here's the top 20 foods that fight cancer. I couldn't write this stuff down fast enough, right? Green tea is the number one cancer fighter that you can consume. I was like, okay, I no longer drink coffee and I now drink green tea. Okay, what else? Berries, great. I love berries. And so you went down this whole thing. So I read his book and I built this sheet of like, these are the strongest cancer fighting foods. I hired a private chef and she was a vegetarian. I was like, you cook only from this list.
Yeah, I remember you, I think you were posting about it maybe on Instagram.
She would fill the refrigerator like, here's all this week's food.
Yeah, but more importantly than that, like you were like, here's information that can save me or will have a big impact on my life, and why would I ignore it? Why wouldn't I lean into this and do these things? Like and you did it like it was your job. And I
still live that way.
Yeah.
I spend an inordinate amount of time in the kitchen building my quality of life. So his book is amazing. I highly recommend. He wrote a second book, Eat to Beat Your Metabolism or something, but it's like, it's science.
Also, when did we decide that food was not important? Like when it's the most important thing that we put into our bodies every day.
Food is medicine. Right.
Yeah.
You look at chemotherapy, one of the longest ones that's been around, carboplatin, that is derived from a tree. Okay. The true kind of natural medicines, they're all derived from nature. Right. Yeah. And so there's a cause and a reaction. Right. And so you do certain things, and not to say that you don't ever do anything, but like when I started reading years ago, and it's like, and this is all before what's come out recently now about alcohol, like, alcohol is a class 1 carcinogen. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. And I read that. I was like, okay, well, I don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
I'm doing that. And my oncologist, every time I used to see him, when I was actively seeing him, he was like, and this is the thing about doctors. So are you still not drinking? Nope. He's like, that's good. They're not going to tell you not to do it because they don't want to be the bad guys and all that. Like, we're not going to try and legislate. And the other thing about the healthcare system is hospitals are run by lawyers and medical profession, right? And so the medical team says, we've done the research. We believe this is the protocol for this kind of disease. Then the lawyers get involved and say, okay, this is how you will talk about it. And this is what you will say and what you won't say. And this is how the information is to be delivered. Okay. So what most patients don't realize is, because they think that these doctors are gods, right? Yes, some of them are really smart and talented, but you ask questions, they will answer. I talked to the oncologist early on. I'm like, he loved me, but there was no other patients like me. I'm like, I've got all these questions. What about this? What do you think about mistletoe therapy? What about high dose vitamin C infusions? And he'd be like, mistletoe therapy, if you want to do it. And he's like, do it. He's like, the only thing I don't want you to do is high dose vitamin C. He's like, because that can interfere with the chemotherapy. And I was like, hey, what about cannabis? Because I'm reading some things that cannabis can be good for cancer. He's like, totally endorse it. If you want to use it, do it. But it's not like they'll tell you these things, right?
No.
So I had to figure all this out on myself. And then a year, 2 years later, I found myself a naturopathic oncologist. She's an oncologist, but she's a naturopath.
They exist?
Yes. Right. And she's actually in Maryland. And so I work with her and I say, I love my medical oncologist, but if I never have to see you again, life will be beautiful. And her and I will stay in our little lane. And so we do all sorts of stuff. And it comes down to two things. You want to stay healthy. It's two things. Keep inflammation low, keep your glucose and insulin low, or at least don't have ongoing spikes all day. So this is my whole thing. The first thing that she asked me when I started working with her was like, she's like, where do you get your water? And I said, not from the tap. She's like, smart. I put in a reverse osmosis system. Like, that's in whatever house I live in, that's in. Do not drink the tap water. I don't care where you live. Okay. Reverse osmosis strips everything out of the water. You put a remineralizer on it. It puts the trace minerals and the taste back in it. Yeah. Easy to do. Like $500.
I'm going to just a note too. I'm going to get all of this written down and from you and links, and we'll add it to the episode notes page on the website on Hello Adeo. I've got a section for escape velocity and all the show notes. And so I just want people to know who are listening, don't freak out trying to write all this down.
Oh yeah. And if I can ever get my website done, that would be the other resource.
Yeah, or track down Tracy, but I'll try and share notes and details from this conversation, because I do think people need to go on this journey for themselves and get smarter about their nutrition and their life in general before having to go through something like this, ideally. But
yeah, ovarian cancer is 1 in 70 women, and I say to people, let me be the one that you know. And let's close the circle there, right? And at cancer in general. And so I'm a big advocate for advocating for your own health, the stuff that you can do around your food and diet, sleep hygiene. This hustle culture is such bullshit. Like, as a woman, particularly a menopausal woman, you must get 8 to 9 hours of actual sleep. Put the damn phone down. Get sleep. It's how your body repairs itself, right? I know this is how I got myself in this stupid situation. I was not getting enough good quality sleep. It's exercise. It's just all the stuff that you know, but you have to make a conscious effort. And the food thing it's super important. Do I eat meat? Yeah, on occasion. And you know what? I either get it from a farmer that I know wherever I am, or I buy it online because it's grass-fed, it's regenerative farming. Not necessarily does it have to be organic, but I will not eat meat out at a restaurant. I will not buy it at the grocery store, even if it's Whole Foods. No, this stuff is shit. Okay. You watch that Food Inc. 2 just recently came out. Watch that. Okay. And that buying in the farmer's market, knowing your farmer, this industrialization of our food supply chain, it's off the charts. He talks about in the film, he's like, some things have gotten better, right? Like, now there's farmers markets everywhere. We're like, yeah, okay, that's right. That was kind of like a thing 20 years ago. But he's like, in other ways, it's gotten so much worse. And it just matters. That's what I just say to people. Like, we're killing ourselves and no one's paying attention and we don't care. And we got an administration that's completely dismantling the EPA. And so you think your water's bad now, you wait.
I know. And now that I have children in my life, now that I'm stepmom, bonus mom, we talk a lot about the
Coolest
nutrition.
mom. You're the coolest mom.
What's that?
You're the coolest mom. Come on.
Cool. Okay, coolest mom. I'm also an old mom. But anyway, I don't have a lot of energy for these 10-year-old boys.
I did watch that podcast.
Oh, with Finn?
Well, it was like, but you know what? He's keeping you. He's keeping you on trend. So you know all what's happening.
And they keep me on my toes, which I appreciate, because it'd be so easy to just get lazy and tired, more tired than I already am. They keep me on my toes and they keep me in the present moment. And I really appreciate that. They are awesome little people. But I worry about their nutrition a lot. And the thing is, when you have a 10-year-old freaking the fuck out because you're trying to get them to eat something that they don't want to eat, there's nothing more soul crushing and harder to overcome than the meltdowns. And Jamie and I are just kind of revisiting this now. Like, look, we got to get serious. I don't care if they're going to melt down. This is not okay that they keep eating this way.
Yeah. Well, and you're in a huge battle because they're social creatures. So they're with friends at somebody else's house and they're out and about and eating. And the best that you can do is just instill the foundation to them. Like I grew up on a farm. Like we had this crazy garden and stuff. So like I have always had a clear understanding where food comes from. So most people have no idea what it takes to get that steak on your plate. How many people hands have touched all the steps that it's gone through, how long it's taken to go that from a calf to an age of the cow where it's edible. And so we always had, because we had animals on the farm too, there's more of a reference for like, this is an accomplishment to get this on the dinner table.
Well, I also don't think that many people are telling 10-year-olds straight up, like, well, if you keep eating the way that you want to and the way that your friends do, you're going to have a shorter life and you're probably going to get sick and it's probably not going to be very good. But hey, yeah, sure, we'll just keep getting it for you because we don't want to deal with the freakouts and we don't want you to feel uncomfortable that you're not drinking like the prime drink that Mr. Beast is selling because he's popular on YouTube and it's probably just full of the worst kind of chemicals. And we're not saying anything. The peer pressure and the fact that I just don't want to let the kids down like that by not being.
Well, it's also an affordability issue, right?
Huge.
Let's face it. We come from financially secure places. And if you do that for a family, like that's super expensive.
Yes. All of this requires a lot of privilege and access and financial abilities that not very many people have. But I guess at least I'll tell the kids the truth so that we can make a better decision, even if both of our options are bad options. At least they'll know I'm telling them the truth and that we're doing our best with what we've got. And granted, we have a lot more options than 99% of the people out there. So I take all of it with a grain of salt. But cancer really you said you grew up on a farm, you know where food came from, but you weren't thinking this much about nutrition before cancer, right?
I was always fairly healthy. I just love to cook. I kind of know what's on my plate, but there's a much sharper focus about where I want to be. Like I'm not eating landscapers outside. Do you hear that?
I do, but we'll see how good this technology is. Let's see how it out.
So I'm in some very narrow lanes. Like when I was getting chemotherapy, it was a very narrow. No processed sugar, no gluten, no meat, no red meat. No, it was like all these things I didn't do. And when I would get infusions, the nurse would be like, wow. First of all, everyone was shocked that I wasn't on any other medications. I'm like, this is the status of America. Of course, I must come with 5 other comorbidities if I have cancer. And they're like, wow, you're doing really well. Your numbers are really well. I'm like, this is a concerted effort. And I would say this was my biggest complaint about Mercy Hospital, and this is hospitals in general. You're in an infusion, and here comes the girl with the cart. They're just trying to make you happy. And she's got Rice Krispie treats and potato chips and chocolate chip cookies. Now, I would go to an infusion room like I was camping because I brought all my own food, my own water, ice packs for my hands and feet so I didn't get neuropathy. It was ridiculous. John would be like, are we staying overnight here? I'm like, we practically are. Okay.
Yeah.
But everyone was like, wow, you're handling all these things really well. I'm like, this isn't by accident. This is like a full-time job. So now I'm much looser, but I'm still like, do I drink? Maybe I might have a glass of champagne here and there, but because I even look at it, people are like, don't you just want? I'm like, yes, that martini, yes. But the problem should be like, one, I just feel like I need a second one. So just don't even, we just don't even go down the path. And
Yeah.
I know, you know how you feel badly the next day?
Oh,
What do you think what it's doing to the insides of your body and the trauma that it has caused? I'm like, I am not giving cancer an inch. Okay. We
mhm.
are not helping this shit at all. I'm
Yeah.
going to make this as hard as possible. And I can bring the whole story full circle by saying, I had that surgery in September 10th, 2019, because my birthday's
Mhm.
September 11th. We can't forget that. So this last September, I had my 5-year scan. So every year it's like 1 year, no recurrence. Okay, it's good. 2 years. So every year, you're like, okay, 2 years, I'm gonna make to the 2-year mark. 2 years, okay, great. We're going great. 3 years is like that's a great benchmark. You make it to 3, and it's like, okay, 3, like we're still clear. This is amazing. And then you make it to 5. 5 is like fireworks. You can make it to 5 years with stage 4 ovarian cancer with no recurrence. I say to people, I am your unicorn, okay? You'd never think you've met one? Well, you've met one, and it's me. The fact I am now 5.5 years out, it is a miracle. A true miracle. It is, and I say that it's that medical treatment I had with the personal responsibility that I took. Because I said, I'm going to find the absolute best medical professions and I'm going to have a hand in this outcome. And I'm going to do everything I possibly can to help what they're doing be more effective. And then I'm going to take the reins from there and I'm going to keep riding this path. And so that's been my philosophy. And I'm overjoyed. Like, I have no worries in the world, please. And then I'm still standing. I'm healthy. To tell you that, and I'll send you these pictures. I want you to look at those pictures and then hear from me and say, I feel as if it was the time before that. Yeah, now menopause, like that sort of stuff sucks, but I don't feel any differently. It's not even humanly possible. I thought I was going to be long dead by now. So the fact that I am still here and I feel as incredible as I do, it's a huge testament. So like I try and help the doctor and he's trying to nationally and internationally talk about HIPEC and how it can be used. It can be used for a multitude of cancers. And a lot of hospitals don't utilize it because they still consider it exploratory or not yet fully vetted. They've been doing this since the 90s. I went to MD Anderson, okay, the best in the
Right.
country, right? That's all they do is cancer. I went to them after my treatment to talk about what might be a good maintenance drug treatment. And I met with them and they're very good. Let me tell you, if you got something bad, like that is a top-notch place. And so they went through my whole file and I said, so let me ask you, I said, would you have done anything differently than the treatment that I had? And they're like, well, we wouldn't have done HIPEC for ovarian cancer. And I was like, well, thank God I didn't come here.
Wow.
So you just don't know. And the other thing is when you look at these cancer statistics is my oncologist would say, stop being Dr. Google, get off the internet. But there's a certain amount of things that you want to know. When you're talking about you live in the Northeast or you live in a highly educated research hospital centric area, you take cancer survival rates, you have to amalgamate that across the whole country. So you think somebody in North Dakota is getting the same treatment you're getting in Boston, New York, or Baltimore? No. So then you start to take that. You look, if you come into it fairly healthy, right? Not a lot of comorbidities, you keep edging your odds. And so you have to be very careful about getting too distracted with these statistics because it's not you.
It's a great point. It's a great point. And we started off this conversation kind of talking about perspective, and obviously going through this has changed yours. And it's a gift now, really, the perspective that you have and that you've given yourself the ability to have by fighting through this war and being successful and hitting. And congratulations on fucking hitting five years. Like, we're all eventually gonna kick the bucket. And you talk about sleep and taking care of ourselves and paying more attention to health, but stress. You talk about stress, and if you could go back to the pre-cancer you, what were the things that you were letting just be a big deal that really weren't?
Well, I will start by saying I'm a Virgo. Okay. So I'm a perfectionist. Okay. Are you a Virgo?
I'm a Cancer.
Oh, okay. So with Virgos, we are perfectionists. Everything is going to be perfect. We're going to make it perfect. Okay. So I already come to the table with a really high bar for everything.
Yeah,
And
perfectionism
so,
is tough.
yeah. And particularly if you were working in a creative environment, right? Because there is no perfection to any of this. Imperfection and sometimes is the best journey, right?
Right.
So there's that you come to the table with. And then just kind of like my personality. I'm very driven, focused, I'm very decisive. I know. It's all of that kind of like didn't come falling down, but it certainly deflated. And then it was like, okay, how far do I want to reinflate any of this? And my level of how much I can take or how far I'm going to be pissed off, now it's whatever, really. Like I play golf, I'll play competitively. Some people get so bent out of shape and they say things, and I always lean into people, I'll say, what's great about this? It's just fucking golf. That's it. No one cares. That's all it is. And so I definitely would have changed like the work thing that I talked about. I would have drawn, my lines in the sand are much brighter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. John wants to go out to dinner with a couple, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to waste 3 hours of my life, of which I don't know how much more time I have, how many more breaths I have. I'm not going to spend it with them.
None of us really know that. And I think it's like the gift of going through a almost guaranteed terminal battle with cancer and coming out the other side is like, that's got to be a completely different lens that you look at life through. But the reality is we all should be looking at life more like that.
Yeah, it's hard to like, you can't like live every day like it's your last, but there's a difference between peering over the edge and I had like a zoom lens.
You were dangled over the edge. Yeah.
I got a real view down there. And it was like, okay, I had always come to that because like I come from a family, 7 with my parents. There's only me and my brother left.
Yeah.
So I've seen people die at young ages. Like, okay, like you gotta kind of make your time here count.
Yeah.
And so now I'm just kind of focused on, I just find joy in the smallest things. You go out for a walk and you're like, with the birds, like they're making noise. And it's just like that, what you talk about with your stepkids, like it's really hard. You have to struggle to live in the present, right? Because you're thinking about what else I got to do. And 100 people have written books about this, but it's a thing, like to be in the present moment and not to get too stressed out about the future. Like I was just texting with someone going through ovarian cancer treatment, and she's like, oh, my scan next month and the scan anxiety. And I was like, stop right there. I said, there's no scan anxiety here. I said, you've done everything that you possibly can. You're going to the best doctors. You're doing all their treatment. You're doing all the stuff for yourself that you think that you can do. I said, there's nothing more that you can do. You go in with a positive attitude because you say, I'm going to prove that everything that this path that we're on, that we're working on is working. And that's what that scan's going to tell me. I said, don't give cancer another minute of your freaking life.
Yeah.
Don't let it give you any more anxiety. It's already taken probably years off your life from the anxiety that you already had. So that's always my philosophy about this is.
Yeah, it's so hard, but it's so true that if you talk about like what you can actually control in life, really, it's your mindset is really the only thing. You can control a lot of other things, but at the end of the day, it's at the end of the day, it's amazing how much we don't take control and ownership over our mindset because it can have such an impact on our lives. And yeah, I hope she took your advice because that's good advice.
Yeah, she did. She's like, that's a really great perspective. I'm like, that's my goal, right? When I was diagnosed in the one thing that's great about Facebook are these little micro groups. They're private. You're on a cancer drug. There is a Facebook group for that drug. And do you want to know the crowdsourcing of all the side effects and what people are doing to deal with it? That's where you go. Because your doctor, you didn't know about this. Okay. So I started immediately on the ovarian cancer things, and I'm scrolling like crazy. Please find me someone that has had stage 4 that's still alive. Like, do they exist? Like, has anybody been here like more than 3 years? Do you live? You're desperate for information. And so I try to always be like this positive resource. And I had the worst. No one gets it any worse than what I have. And so I'm here to tell you that like you can make it through the other side. And even if it's only for 3 more years, then make it 3 great fucking years. You don't know.
Man, that's a good spot to end this conversation, I think. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for just sharing your journey. And you're you were already a badass, but it's been great. It's been great knowing you and hearing these things that you've gone through and what you've learned. And I just really appreciate that you're trying to share a lot of that knowledge. And meanwhile, like, let's also save the world if we can while we're here, at least make it a little bit better. Let's just focus on good, doing good, just like whether it's with your email or with just being a good human. So thank you again
Yeah.
for joining me today.
I just want to be a above the ground badass. Okay. That's my goal.
Yeah, let's keep kicking as long as possible on that front.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was such a great opportunity to be with you all afternoon. It's been a while since I've seen you.
Let's do it again soon.